How's it going, guys? Welcome to the Talk4 Podcast. So excited to have you here today and show you this fantastic episode. Just want to say quickly that episodes like this one and all the ones before and the ones in future are made possible by people who subscribe. Hopefully, just like you. I'm going to ask you today if you can leave a subscribe, leave a follow, leave a rating, leave a like or a comment, and just support the show in the little ways that you can like that. It makes a huge difference on my end. And quickly, just want to plug as well. I've taken 30 of the best episodes of this podcast and turned them into a fantastic book that goes into 150 secrets to greatness. Each one of those 30 episodes gets crunched down into 5 of the best key takeaways from the whole talk and turns them into a fantastic book. Highly recommend you check it out. Please support the show by grabbing a copy, either a paperback or an ebook. And I can't wait to show you guys this one today. So guys, without further ado, let's get over to the episode. How's it going, guys? Welcome to episode 129 of Talk4, the quickfire podcast where we ask 4 great questions to unique and interesting people. Behind the mic today is your host, Skupien. That's me. Let me introduce our absolutely incredible guest today, who is back on the hard ground right now after a long time at sea, and he is spending some time with us today. I'm absolutely honored to introduce Chris Chowdah, who's going to be answering some questions today. So Chris, how are you doing today? Welcome to the show. So glad to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Louis. Wow, 130 some odd episodes. I'm honored to be here. So thank you.
Yeah, like I have to say, some of those 130 have just been incredible, and I am so excited about this talk today. I've really looked into the stuff that you get up to and the way that you lead, and I think it's just going to be one of those top episodes out of that 130 odd that is going to be just so impactful for people. And I'm super pumped about this. It's going to be great. But just to get us all on the same page then, so we always do like a little bit of an elevator pitch, 30 to 60 seconds roughly, just kind of who you are, what your day job is, and a little kind of intro or snapshot into the life of you, which I think is going to be a pretty cool little segment. So yeah, fire away. Let's hear all about it.
Okay, so I'm Captain Chris Chowdah Hill, like clam chowder, the food, and the commanding officer of the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, which is one of 11 Nimitz class, or sorry, one of 10 Nimitz class aircraft carriers in the U.S. Navy. We also have a Ford class aircraft carrier, which is fairly new. And my background is I've been in the Navy for almost 29 years, mainly as a Naval Flight Officer, flying in the E-2C Hawkeye. I did that for about 20 years before switching to a slightly different career path that led me to where I am today, commanding an aircraft carrier. But I'm originally from the Boston area in Massachusetts. And yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. Looking at I just love to look at the kind of people like you who are just so accomplished and then go through that whole, the Air Force or the Navy. They always have that sort of like list of accommodations and jobs, and your LinkedIn profile. I spent probably, a significant amount of time just flicking down, trying to find the bottom of that list of incredible things that you've done. And it always just got me thinking, how did all of that start? So on the show, we always talk about a bit of backstory and try to figure out where people come from and where at least those kind of initial bits of leadership starts to get formed as well. So if we wind the clocks back, going through that list of kind of experiences and positions that you've held, it just, like I said, it just keeps going. But where did it all start for you then? So is the Navy kind of in your blood? Is it something that you wanted to pick up all just for you as a starting point? And just walk us through kind of who mentored you and where you started to pick up the lessons that you've learned that you're implying today.
Okay, so yeah, it goes back to when I was pretty young as a teenager. My dad was in the Navy, and we talked about it all the time. I asked him a million stories. He told me some tall tales, some exciting stories, and he's like, "Son, you need to go and become an officer." And I said, "Okay, Dad." And so we did not grow up with much money, so I applied for an ROTC scholarship to one of the university I went to, Tufts University. And I got it and went through that program. So when I graduated from college, I became an ensign in the United States Navy, which was good. But I originally wanted to go Intel, and that option, for whatever reason, was taken away. So it's kind of like, what am I going to do? And so I said, you know what? I'll become a pilot, but I couldn't actually be a pilot because my eyesight was terrible. By the way, I did get the surgery eventually, and my eyesight was perfect. And then I got old, and now I have reading glasses on, so it's all coming back. So I did not miss these classes, but so it started there, and it's sort of like the career kind of took me. And early on in my career, I wanted to become a lawyer, maybe go to the JAG Corps, Judge Advocate General, because I was a political science major, government type major. So engineering wasn't really my thing, but the Navy just carried me along, and I just kept going. And then I realized, I was getting pretty good at this, and I wanted to continue in that profession for a long time. And then, at this point, I'm just kind of afraid to get out of the Navy because I never had a real job interview. So I wouldn't even know how that would go. So I think I have something to offer for the Navy. Hopefully, they'll keep me in a little bit longer.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's something we're going to get into quite a lot, I imagine, further down the line in this podcast. But I feel like it'd be remiss not to at least cover just a little bit now is just the way of the warrior sailor then. So before we get into that, really, I just want to kind of see. So is that something that is a you thing, or is that something that dad passed along to? Because obviously we're talking about your dad and the influence there to get into the Navy. Is that something that he kind of imposed a bit in your life as well that you've kind of passed along, or is that something that's completely a you thing, really?
He was one of the things that stood out about him, my dad, was that he was just nice to everybody, didn't care who you were. I think that played a role. I was also a camp counselor in the summers when I was a teenager at Camp Calumet Lutheran up in New Hampshire in the mountains, and it was a religious camp. And I got to see some leadership there from some of the lead counselors, and I really respected how they do business. But yeah, so there's a little bit of a religious twist to this, a little bit of Christianity, the fact that I feel like I'm obligated to love everybody. You don't have to be Christian to do that, right? Anybody could do it. And so that has carried with me. And I think for my whole career, despite any stress or anything we were doing, I never would let the system take away my wits. I wanted to be me, even if that wasn't compatible with the military. So that concept of, going out of your way to try to love people at least, even when it's sometimes against your very nature, that has informed my leadership style. And, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it works against me. But that's what, led to the way of the warrior sailor philosophy, which, by the way, I was sort of working on a book, and we'll see where that goes. But right before taking over command of the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, I had worked with a number of other leaders that I was working with on other ships and squadrons, and we would always sit down and really stop and think. And that's probably one of the biggest failings, I think, of most leaders. You just don't take the time to stop and think and maybe read, maybe evaluate, try out some theories. So we stopped, we thought, and we came up with some ideas. I remember around 2011, 2012, I was working with my commanding officer of a squadron at the time. I was his executive officer, second in command. And we decided that morale was the thing. Morale was the thing that would kind of tip the scale to make us the best squadron in the Navy. So we sat down and tried to quantify what is this morale thing that everyone keeps talking about. We made assumptions that morale was things like happiness or time off. We were wrong about that. Morale is a little bit deeper. It's probably spiritual. It may manifest itself in terms of job satisfaction. That is something people can measure, and it has been measured in studies. And we decided that was the number one factor. We realized there were other factors. For example, there were health factors. Did you get enough sleep? Because if you didn't sleep that next day, you're kind of a jerk, right? Your moods are, you don't have great moods. It actually affects relationships. And so sleep was a factor. Health was a factor. Relationships are a factor. If someone's having a failed relationship, the morale's probably not high either. Now, I realize as leaders, at least in the military, in any company, you can't control someone else's relationship, right? So you can only control so much. But what you can control is the job satisfaction. And that became the drive to establish the way of the warrior sailor. And the question was, okay, we figured out what morale is, then how can we create it? That was the big question.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, my experience with morale has always been thinking, yeah, it's like team morale and stuff, but also kind of like morale patches and things. So when I kind of dug into that a bit as well, it's like, what is a morale patch? It's a piece of fabric on a piece of Velcro on a shirt or something. Right. But actually, that's team camaraderie and making yourself feel like you're part of a team and being part of something. I know you guys are quite big on the challenge coins, and I've got a few up there as well and stuff. But even just something small like that can really improve that whole team culture feeling. And I agree with you as well. Just having good health and general happiness as well must make you a much better person. Because I've always found as well that just, one good deed or one bad deed snowballs either direction down the hill, right? So if you do one bad
Right.
thing to someone, then they're probably having a pretty bad day after that. So they might go and do something or say something. And before you know it, it kind of spreads, right? Is that something you've
Right.
seen? I mean, I imagine in a confined place like a ship, stuff like that is, it gets around fast if that spreads as well. And bad morale must really sort of hit home and be very obvious in a small place like
Yeah,
that,
so
right?
that's a good question. Like, what are the things that can take away morale, right? There's a lot of things. Not knowing what the future is. For example, we're on month 7 of a 9-month deployment. We were supposed to be home on month 7 when we were in the Red Sea last year, and I couldn't say when we're coming home. All I knew is that there was more fight to be had, and that changed everyone's plans. Some people were planning to get married. Some people had like big life events, and that was kind of thrown out the window. And people kept asking, "Sir, when are we going home?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And all I could do is kind of repeat the mission and purpose, which we were out there to save lives, and I needed everybody on board for that. But that's part of it. Rumors start to spread. How do you take care of rumors? You address them right away. So that requires leaders to constantly communicate. We call it rapid, relentless, repetitive, positive communications.
Nice.
I had to practice saying that several times. It's R3P, rapid, relentless, repetitive,
Yeah.
positive communications. But that meant, all of us had to communicate with our subordinates every day, remind them what the plan is, tell them what we knew and did not know. If we did not know, we explained why we didn't know. It was a constant battle to keep morale up, right? And then even when that works, in our case, just like in any military unit that's deployed, there are conditions that are like almost unlivable. Like for us, for instance, the water temperature was like 90, 91 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty high. I can't tell you what that is in Celsius off the top of my head, but it was hot enough that the air conditioning system, which derives its cooling from the water, couldn't cool itself. So people had a lot of trouble sleeping. And there you go, you compound the problem. Now they're not sleeping and they're in a bad mood, and morale starts to tank. So yeah, I think you're right. Just going back to an earlier point you had about the teamwork stuff and being part of a team, being part of something greater than yourself. We can also look at morale as an individual thing, but it can express itself as a unit or a bunch of people. And I would call that just esprit de corps. It's the same thing. It's sort of like collective morale. And that's kind of what you want to get to. The whole hypothesis here, you're not creating morale just for morale's sake, just because you want people to smile. You're doing it because at the end of the day, it's going to produce results. You're going to start to see people caring a little bit more. In the nuclear community, which I'm part of now, we care about ownership. Do people own their equipment? Do they care about their equipment? They don't want anybody else to touch it, and they want it to work. And when it doesn't work, they get upset. You want that ownership. That is derived from morale. So, you could do better on inspections, and ultimately, we're in the military. We have to do better in combat. And here's the thing: if you look at a lot of the greatest military commanders of all time, a lot of them will say that morale will tip the scale in war in so many words. General Eisenhower said, he's our namesake, he said, morale is the greatest single factor in successful war. If that's true, then don't you think we should be studying the crap out of this and trying to figure it out?
Yeah.
And then trying to apply that in our leadership, not just in the military, but in everything we do, sports teams, schools, corporations. If we can figure out morale, we're going to increase productivity, and people are going to enjoy working there, and we're going to produce results. That's my sales pitch. I don't make
Yeah.
money off of that, but I
Oh, it was a
truly
good one.
believe it, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
it was a good one. And it's funny you should say that as well, because obviously I can't speak of any names, but it's in my personal life too. I've noticed this as well. There's a few people who I see on a day-to-day basis who, may work for a certain job, and said person who may well be, the owner or something, the person who works for that person who really, sometimes doesn't like the owner, who kind of treats that person like not very well at
Right.
times, that person's work ethic is so low. But when I ask that person who I've been super nice to for a long time if they can help me with something or promote the book or anything that I've done, my God, the results they produce is incredible. But I
Yeah.
imagine, that's like a small example, but in somewhere like an aircraft carrier where you're constantly battling things and, not just the maintenance side of it, but also, the enemies and stuff too. I mean, the Red Sea must have been an absolute nightmare and everything, but, bad morale, that probably, compounds, right? And then eventually that leads to what, like some kind of an equipment breakdown or some part of the defense there is just not working or,
Right,
how
right.
does
That could
bad morale
happen.
look? What does, what are some of those examples that you've
So
seen
yeah,
where it's had an effect?
yeah, you're right. One of the things you should see is like a neglect in terms of preventative maintenance. Like we have thousands of things that must occur every day for preventative maintenance. Sometimes it's like adding a little bit of grease to a valve stem. Sometimes it is just, cleaning out a filter from an air conditioner. If those things get skipped, then they start to compound and it adds up. And next thing you know, we have a broken piece of equipment and everyone's panicking because nobody can, for example, sleep in one of the berthing areas because the air conditioning doesn't work,
Mm.
right? That would be, in my opinion, a breakdown of morale. Sometimes this comes from toxic leadership. Like this is another anti-morale sort of thing, where the leader just doesn't treat people well. And we haven't really talked about like how do you actually create it. And just I might as well just bring it up. Like in principle, you create morale by loving and valuing people. They have to feel valued. The corollary to that is if people are not loving and valuing each other or their subordinates, they need to be held accountable. And there's many ways to do that. And there's many ways to show people you love them and value them. I mean, there's probably a smorgasbord of ideas and how you can positively recognize the good work of other people. And it costs you oftentimes nothing to do that, right? You just have to take some time and think about who am I recognizing today? I think that's one of the things that a lot of leaders fail to do. And I have failed to do that at times as well. And I recognize that. So you have to kind of deliberately work on it. The other thing is having mission and purpose. It was easy in the Red Sea to have mission and purpose, which was to save lives. And so we had that kind of motivated for us. The vision of our ship is just to be the best damn ship of the Navy. It's very vague. I'm
Mm.
not asking to be the best damn ship in the world, but maybe that applies too. But to be part of a company, a corporation, a military unit that believes in those kinds of principles, that believes that they are the best, that can only add benefits. Now, the opposite to that, the corollary is cynicism. So bad attitudes, negativity. For instance, we're in a shipyard period right now where we're doing massive work on the ship. And traditionally, and I've done these before, there's a lot of negativity going into it. And I get it. You're doing a lot of work on the ship for many months. You're not doing your normal job, which is, being out to sea and fighting the enemy. There's another aspect to this that, sailors, just like soldiers, always complain. So we always have something to complain about, and that's normal too. If we're not complaining, then something's probably wrong. But that cynicism can get real nasty when it starts affecting your relationships with other people. For instance, if we start getting nasty with our shipyard workers, these are the civilians that is their life goal to fix these ships and get them ready for warfare. If those relationships break down, that will start leading to more bad morale, and then things don't get fixed on time, and then the ship gets extended in the shipyard, and we don't meet our milestones post shipyard. So there's a lot of psychological things happening all at the same time that can precipitate into something like this. But I'll tell you, cynicism is the death of morale. We have to fight it. Cynicism is the belief that you don't really believe in the potential of human beings, right? You've got to believe that. And sometimes you'll have human beings that just no matter what you do are going to screw around and mess up, and you just can't get them to buy into the program. Some of those you're going to have to get rid of. You might have to fire people. Some of them you're kind of stuck with for whatever reason. But you can't let that 5% or that 2% drive all your decision making and then apply that to the 95% who are doing good work every single day. So you have to fight that tendency as a leader to focus too much time on the bad. Focus on the good, recognize the good, make sure they're doing their job, they have good direction. You've given them all the expectations that they need, and they will go forth and conquer.
So something that's kind of stood out to me there and stuff is, you talk about love and everything too. And I feel like looking at your leadership philosophy, some of the things that you do don't necessarily kind of, I wouldn't say work with, but they don't kind of like stay on the same guidelines as what is a kind of traditional military sort of stereotype
Right.
necessarily, right?
Yes.
But I mean, what got me thinking there is just, how do you if you're not you, how do you like love people that you don't really know? Like when you say that, is it metaphorical? Do you really love all those people that much? And how do you how do you do that? I guess.
I think in the Greek language is like 6 or 7 different versions of love, and I don't even know where we fall in using our one single English word for it. But uh, that's a challenge, right? It is applying empathy or compassion whenever you can, even when it's working against your very nature. If you see someone in trouble, as a leader, you have to now go to them and address it. It becomes your problem. You take on the problems of your people. This is just servant leadership 101, right? To
Mm.
me, that's love. Um, there's different types of love. There's love between brothers and sisters. There's love between spouses. I get all that. But the kind of love that results in, when someone will say something like, I will get in front of a bullet and take a bullet for that guy. That to me is love, right? When I ask sailors how they survived the 9-month deployment, like what got them through it, and I was hoping they'd say things like having Wi-Fi, and that was part of it. Having Wi-Fi and the ability to connect with people at home was awesome. But what really got them through was the love of their brothers and sisters in arms, the people that they're working with every day, their friends. They just say, "Oh, my friends got me through it." So that's an example of where your shipmates and your friends are kind of they're making you feel loved and valued. That's a good thing, and that gets them through the toughest of times.
So it's kind of
And
like
by the
that
way,
brotherhood
this
and
is different
sisterhood.
than like,
Mm.
yeah, it's a brotherhood and sisterhood, right? It's family. There've been studies on family saying, hey, like for instance, you could have a Facebook page and you're not going to know any more than about 200 people. That's it. It's like the human mind cannot comprehend more than that. In my profession, or at least on my ship, we have 3,000 crew members. How do I create a family? I don't know. So I think it's scientifically impossible, but at least we can try, right? And maybe it'll work on some people. So we work on that. There's something else I was going to say. I forgot. I got a terrible memory. I just go off on tangents.
No,
Did that answer your
I
question?
it did answer my question. It really did. But I mean,
Yeah.
how do you because I guess when people build relationships like that, it must be super tough going around in the rotations where you have all those people. I mean, 3,000 people, they're not staying in one place, or as soon as that deployment finishes or they get back home, they probably move
No,
on to different jobs, right? So how do you kind of manage that sort of rotation of new and old people and then the mix there?
I am not managing it well. I'll tell you, it's I'll walk around. I'm like, I don't even know who you are, right? And one of the issues is, due to the turnover, we get something like 60 to 80 new people per month. In essence, in a 2-month period, we're getting an entire new squadron equivalent of people, and I'm losing the same amount. So there's this constant turnover. So you're not going to know everybody. You try your best. You try to meet with everybody, but it's just large volumes. And you could ask like presidents of universities, how do they do it? They can't do it either, right? You just do your very best, and make sure even if you don't know that person, you still treat them with dignity and respect, and you try to love them when they need you, right? So yeah, that's a problem, but we continue to work through it, and that's another reason why rapid, relentless, repetitive, positive communications is the thing. You might feel like for instance, on usually around on Thursday or Friday, I'll say, hey, everyone have a safe weekend, right? I'm worried about drinking and driving and people doing stupid things. And I realize that I've said the same thing over and over. I realize the people who've been there have heard it again and again, but I haven't said it to the new people. So if you feel like you're beating a dead horse, you're probably doing the right thing, right? So you just got to keep trying.
All right, give it to me one more time then. So it's the rapid, relentless, what's a bit slower?
Repetitive,
Oh, repetitive. Keep
positive,
going.
yes,
Positive
positive
communication.
communications, R3P, right?
That's
That's in the way of the warrior sailor as well.
that's a mouthful. Can we shorten that?
Yeah, so R3P is the only thing I could come up with. Like I don't have any new ideas. I've given
Uh,
up.
it's
I
great. No, I
got
like
too
it.
old.
I like it. No, it's a good test of memory, and I'm gonna try and write down the wall and read that in the morning. That's probably the best way of remembering that. But look, I feel like we skipped ahead
Yeah.
here a bit then. So we've kind of gone off on what you're doing right now and stuff. I want to figure out how you got there, right? So talk to me about that career a bit more. Then, so obviously you got inspired. Your dad had an influence. You got into the Navy. Just kind of
Yeah.
walk me through some of those initial jobs, some of the the more prolific ones you got into, how they came about, and just a little bit more about kind of where you picked up those skills during that time in the Navy, getting towards where you are now. So kind of bring us from starting point just entered to basically present day you.
Okay. Oh boy, this is going to take a bit. Plus, I'm not practiced at talking about myself. Everyone's always uncomfortable about that. But I say, I went through initial flight training down in Pensacola, ended up getting selected for E2 Hawkeye. So I'm sitting in the back of this aircraft in a tube with two other people, and our job was to, control the mission, sort of being like to use an American term, the quarterback of the skies, right?
Mm.
The battle manager. And so I did that for 3 years. We did combat operations at that time, was largely focused on Iraq around 1998 to 2001. We did Operation Desert Fox, which was very exciting. And then Operation Southern Watch, which was to prevent Iraqi aircraft north from coming down and attacking the Shiites. So again, I was pretty young back then. And from there, I ended up getting selected to be an instructor at Top Gun. They decided that they wanted to have a E2C Hawkeye aircraft controller, which I
Nice.
was, to be on their staff. And so that was an incredible opportunity. That dissuaded me from going to the JAG Corps and becoming a lawyer. So I said, hey, if Top Gun wants me, it's the first time in my life that anyone ever said they wanted me. So I said, I got to do this. And Top Gun was a super professional organization with the best of the best for pilots and naval flight officers, and it was just amazing. And I learned quite a bit there. I got over my nerves in terms of briefing because I was always very shy, and I still am shy. But the more you practice, the better you get. And so even when I speak to large audiences, I still get nervous. I still get sweaty armpits. And I don't think that'll ever go away. But as long as I feel prepared, I'm going to kick ass. So I do my best there. And then there I went back into the Hawkeye community. I had some ancillary jobs at the Pentagon working on stuff, nothing too cosmic. I got to work on the future of naval aviation. So stuff that we were going to build out beyond 2030. That was exciting.
Nothing too
And so I had
cosmic,
some
right?
insight
So
on
you said
that.
nothing too cosmic, and then it's the future of naval aviation, right? Okay, so
Yeah,
that's the kind of
yeah.
career we're dealing with here, right? Cool.
Right. Maybe I use classic British understatement for everything. But yeah, no, that was fun. But then, ultimately this brought me to become the commanding officer of a squadron, right? So I'm the leader of the squadron. We had 4 aircraft and about 125 people, which is not a lot, right? It still felt like a lot because I'd never done that before. And by this point, I was a little bit more mature. It took me a while to become mature, but I had some good leaders along the way that would take me inside and say, Chowdah, fix yourself or you will never lead. And I said, yes, sir. And those people helped me and I credit them. But if you do well as a squadron commander, then you have an opportunity to potentially go down the nuclear power path. So I got selected for the nuclear power path, which is about a 10-year commitment. So that was like 9 years ago for me, right? And they send you to nuclear power school, which is like the Navy SEALs of academics. It's insane. So I was there for about a year and a half, learning how to operate nuclear reactors and learning how to be an engineer, even though I wasn't an engineer by trade. I'd never done electrical engineering, and they had me going through diagrams and doing math problems. And they said algebra would come back, but it was gone from my brain because I hadn't done algebra since probably 1993. And so I got through that program. I eventually started to click and I started to do well. And they sent me to be the XO, the executive officer, second in command of an aircraft carrier, the George H.W. Bush. And they throw you right into there. You're the second in command of 3,000 people. You've been on aircraft carriers before, and I've been on many, but you didn't understand how they really worked. You didn't understand the departmental culture because as a squadron guy, you just want your food, you want your air conditioning, you want your the flight deck to work. But now everything mattered. And then from there, they send you to a medium-sized ship, which for me was LPD-24, the USS Arlington. We had about 400 sailors, and it had the capacity of holding about 600 Marines. So it was a amphibious transport dock. It's designed to drop Marines ashore in bad places. And that was a very exciting tour. I did not deploy with them, but I did a maintenance period and a workup to get them ready for deployment, and that was awesome. We called ourselves the best damn ship in the Navy, and then when I became the CEO of the Eisenhower, I took that with me. We are now the best damn ship in the Navy, right? So I make sure it gets painted on bulkheads, walls, on different parts of the ship, and that has happened on both ships. So that's kind of like the 29 years in a nutshell.
Quick ad break here, guys. Just want to introduce you to Shopify. Shopify is the all-in-one e-commerce platform that runs basically everything I'm doing, from my personal website to my business websites. It truly is a phenomenal system, and I have a way for you guys to get started today for just £1 building your business, whether that's personal brand, whether that's e-commerce, whether that's a blog. It has everything. It has its own app store that can get you basically every feature you could expect from an online store, and it really just works out of a fantastic all-in-one system, which I can only highly recommend enough. And you guys can start for just £1 today. It's an incredible offer. Absolutely amazing. And the link to that is in the bio, or I'll put it up in the tab at the top. I think it'll be top right at the screen for you guys right now. So yeah, guys, check it out. Make sure to get this offer and yeah, get started. It's fantastic. Amazing. I mean, you're just rattling off these just incredible accolades. I mean, but the thing I really, really like about you is that you just strike me as the most humble guy, and just the way that you talk about things. Even I know it's a small thing, but when I asked you that question, a few minutes ago, and you said, "Hey, I'm not doing this very well," I just think that you're so humble. It's really nice. But I got to ask you then, do you think that your career is something special? Because I think, listening to this, it just sounds so incredibly successful, and I imagine it's much more prolific than a lot of people ever really get to do. And the things you're commanding and what you're doing right now, it seems so profound. Do you think it's an abnormally incredible career that you're on? Talk to me about that. What do you think what do you think of you?
Yeah. No, there's two sides to this. One is I have many friends who've done the same stuff that I've done. So we don't sit around and pat each other on the back, and they're exciting people. They're flawed just like I am. And we've been lucky in some cases and set up and put into good positions by others. Timing worked. And then, the desire to keep going also played a factor there. But in any case, I'm not the only one who's done this. There's been hundreds, thousands in the U.S. Navy who've done something like this, right? And some of them are my heroes. But at the other side of the coin is, like, if you don't take a second to appreciate where you are, there was times that I was in the Red Sea and I'm like, I am the commanding officer of a warship in a combat zone, and we just struck at the Houthis because they tried to strike at us. And this is the most incredible experience of my life, and I get to potentially change the lives of 5,000 people on this ship. Not that I change them, I don't know, but at least the potential to do it was very exciting. Like, if you can't appreciate that, you're an idiot. So I had to really sit down and just say, I have a good life. I'm married. I have two wonderful daughters, a wonderful wife, and I don't talk about them enough, but they are the pride and joy of my life, right? They're off in New York City right now. My oldest is at music school up there, and my youngest is there. They're going to go see a musical. I think it's a Michael Jackson tribute or something tonight. So I wasn't invited.
Oh no. What'd you do?
Yeah. Well, no, I'm actually going on a trip, so the timing didn't work out. I'm going to give some post-deployment briefs next week to different places to keep telling the story.
Are you sad that you're missing the Michael Jackson tribute?
No, it's good. It's fine. Last weekend, my wife brought me to a Tina Turner tribute musical, which was great, and it's the life I have. I'm hitting musicals, man.
There we go. Right. So what I'm thinking then, so you guys say it's best damn ship in the Navy. I had a podcast a while ago with David Marquet. He was the commander of the Santa Fe nuclear sub, and his book, I know he's done really well with it and stuff, but he talks about and spoke about in the podcast too that he turned it from the worst performer to the best performer. So when you say the best damn ship in the Navy, is that perceived, or is there an actual kind of metric behind that you follow? Talk to me a bit about that kind of accolade there.
Like, how do you measure being the best when there's no actual list that comes out that rank orders the ships on a spreadsheet. So when I took over in March of 2023, the ship actually was definitely not the best. But I declared it anyway because I had spent a month walking around the ship before I took over. I was kind of like undercover boss, didn't have my rank displayed. I just have a jacket over me, so they couldn't tell who I was. And I'd ask them questions. And I very quickly realized that those sailors had the capacity to be the very best. They wanted leadership. They wanted to do something exciting. I said, okay, these are the best. And so you take a little bit of a calculated risk by saying it. So when I did my change of command speech, that was the first thing I said. We are the best damn ship in the Navy. Now we had some push-ups to do, so we did that. There's a lot of things we had to correct. We had to remove some toxicity. We had to make sure people were treating each other to love and value each other. And we did terrible on some inspections. We just weren't ready. So there was more work to be done. But I'd say towards the end of 2023, things started to look up. And by the way, we're dealing with a 47-year-old ship it's just old, like it breaks more than, a newer ship. So that added a lot of stress. But I'd say by October of 2023, we went from, in terms of retention and re-enlistment, which is a key metric, we were the worst of 11 aircraft carriers at first. By the end of 2023, we were the best. So that was good. And then at that point, we got challenged by a difficult deployment. And so we sort of evened out as the average in terms of re-enlistment. But then, after accomplishing what we did in the Red Sea, flying every single day for 6 months in just the Red Sea, managing attacks, fighting back, destroying hundreds of targets, saving hundreds of lives. I would say that is another metric that shows that we were able to do it. And we did not miss a beat any given day. I'll tell you, we even launched more than 150 alert aircraft. This was outside our normal flight hours. Normal flight hours would be about 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And then the seventh day would be a maintenance day where you have to, fix things. It's still a working day. So you never stop working, even though you're in the heat and it's 120 to 130 degrees outside on the flight deck. And it actually burns through the soles of your feet. And we did 150 plus alert aircraft launches outside of that in the middle of the night to kind of go after drones and make sure they weren't a threat to us or anybody else. So it was if that's not the best damn ship in the Navy, I don't know what is. Let's put it that way.
A great answer. That's a really great answer. I mean, when you look at all of that, I mean, I know there's so much stuff that you can't speak about, and it's all, there's grey tape, red tape everywhere, and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, what are you most proud of? What are the best accomplishments of your time doing that? And what do you think's been the biggest impact you've had within, on the world scale, really?
One of the hardest thing is improving the external reputation of the ship. The ship did not have a good reputation. I know this because I used to make fun of the Ike. That's what we call a ship. When I was the XO of the Bush, I'd say, you don't want to be like Ike. And so I kind of contributed to that problem, sort of karma that I was selected to be its CO. But I was worried about the reputation. Reputation is a lagging indicator. Like you could do great in all kinds of things. You can improve re-enlistment and retention. But it's going to take the larger community a longer time to recognize the greatness of your people. We eventually did that. I'll tell you, through a little bit of social media, I was able to get the word out about the ship. And, in some cases, we became a household name, the USS Dwight D Eisenhower, because we're in the action and you had a crazy commanding officer who was tweeting about it on social media, right? So that worked, but that doesn't help the Navy community that are more critical. We have done much better at that. One of the things I look at, though, is when someone's coming to the command, what do they feel when they got selected for this ship? And I ask them, so what was it like? So for, the first year and a half I've been here, everybody would do the sucking teeth sound when they found out they were going to the Ike, like, ooh, the Ike, right? The Ike always gets screwed. The Ike's a tough ship, There were terms like cell block 69 because we're CVN-69, and they called it Icatraz. after a famous prison off the West Coast. Anyway, so a lot of bad press there. But recently I had a woman who just got selected to come to the Ike, and I asked her, what was the reaction? They said, "Oh, wow, you're going to the Ike?" And people were excited for her. That's what I was looking for. I remember talking to a sailor 2 years ago who was going through boot camp, and when she got selected for the Ike, people started laughing, and then she cried. I'm like, I finally gone 180. I was going to say 360. I've gone 180 on that one, and we're starting to get some positive external, a reputation, which is what I was looking for. So there we are.
That's
A
one.
metric, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a metric. Yeah, I mean, public perception and stuff has a massive impact on recruitment and stuff. And I know all about that from the air
Right.
shows and stuff. But just having a great display team can make a massive difference. And I think another great example on kind of the PR aspect is just you're one of the guys who I think you may have mentioned it, or maybe I heard it in one of your podcasts. But Top Gun, that had a massive effect on you, right? Probably as a kid,
Yeah.
or when did you kind of see that? And not too
Uh,
sure when
well,
that.
I heard of Top Gun came out as a movie in 1986, I think. I could be wrong, but um, yeah, I liked the movie, and it also kind of jived with what my dad was talking about at the time. And he wasn't pushing me to go to the military, but just talking about it. I asked him a million questions. So there you go. But getting to work on the staff, it wasn't as cool as the movie. The movie was based out of San Diego. The actual Top Gun had moved in 1996 to the middle of the desert in Fallon, Nevada. So it's a little bit different location. And by the way, I love Fallon, Nevada. I love the people there. I love the remoteness and the attitudes. But it's just the sheer professionalism. For example, if we were going to give a brief, it had to get murder boarded 6 or 7 times. The murder board is where a group of Top Gun instructors with experience sit in the audience and you give your brief. You have to have your entire brief memorized. You cannot look at the slides that are behind you. You just have to click to the next slide without looking back, and it better be there. And you've memorized not only what's on the slide, but all the additional talking points. And so you practice your butt off to do that. Now, at the end of the day, you come up with a brief that's pretty mechanical because we're aviators, we're not actors, so we're a little bit robotic. But you calm down over time. But it's that sort of professionalism that they had there. I mean, we even struggled over how much polish to put on our boots, what color T-shirt we're going to wear, how we're going to conduct our annual physical fitness assessment, stuff like that. It was the place to be. It changed how I thought. I might have become a little bit annoying to some people, coming out of there with all my Top Gun values and then bringing it back to a normal squadron that might be a little bit more relaxed. And that did happen. But I inspired a few people to eventually go to Top Gun as students and then later as instructors. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. But that's what it was all about there. I mean, I had a great podcast, but I don't know if he was in command maybe when you were there or not, but Tom Trotter was a great podcast episode I had, and he spoke about how the whole point of Top Gun was to do that, to teach that, and then take it to your squadron, so you're elevating the standards of the whole Navy really more than anything. And It
Right.
sounds like that's exactly what you did. So if the squadron wasn't on board of that, then they clearly hadn't kind of grasped the concept, I guess, right?
Right. Like, so, another benefit of it was if the enemy developed a new tactic, we would like re-engineer it, try to replicate it, try it in modeling, and then try it in the air. So the response to it, create like a software upgrade or a different way to fly the jet. Capture that in writing. We could do this within days. Send it out to the fleet, and we're sending it out to the previous Top Gun students and instructors who are now back in the fleet, and they had the job of disseminating it in real time. You didn't have to wait for a publication. You didn't have to wait for a doctrine manual to get written, and that can take months, right? With all the reviews and everything, it happened so fast. I mean, we have to be able to learn at that pace. Similar things happened in the Red Sea. We had we're dealing with a different kind of threat. The U.S. Navy had never dealt with large airborne drones that have warheads in the nose cones. and how to shoot those down. They're difficult because, low radar cross section, low infrared cross section. So we had to make a few adjustments very quickly with the help of organizations like Top Gun and some of the other technical communities that are associated with the U.S. Navy. Were pumping out products to us in real time. We're able to adjust and start shooting them down in large numbers, right? It's amazing how the system works, but I like the way it is. And that
Definitely.
ability to like rapidly learn, it's sort of like in our culture. I mean, the Brits have it as well. I mean, that's another reason why we're so tied in with you guys, but we get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to ask then. I mean, I've been in a few fighter jets now and stuff, and I've it's the best thing ever. It's what I would, as a young me would have killed to have done that, and I get to kind of live just a little piece of that dream sometimes only
Yeah.
as me right now and stuff. But I got to ask you then. So, were you ever tempted to strap into the back seat of a Hornet, or are you pretty happy just launching them off the flight deck?
Um, well, when I was at Top Gun, I got to fly in the F-18, and we even had F-16s that we had gotten Air Force jets, but we were using them in the Navy as adversaries. So I got to fly in the back seat of both of those a little bit because we didn't have E2s at Top Gun at the time. They don't now, but there's some locally. And then when I became the CO of the Ike, I went through the F-18 syllabus so that I could fly in the back of EA-18Gs or F-18. So I did a lot of flights with those squadrons in the back seat, and I loved it, no doubt. And I love the fact that the flights are a lot shorter in general than a Hawkeye flight. So that's helpful too. But I think once we got into the Red Sea, like every single flight mattered, and I wasn't as proficient as I needed to be to help the pilot from the back seat in an F-18 or certainly in an EA-18G Growler. So I was more comfortable in the Hawkeye, and even flying with the Hawkeyes, which I did every Friday, which I felt like I was breaking rules, but I wasn't. It's just like, why am I in an aircraft when I should be on my ship? Well, that's a separate problem, but I loved it. It was good therapy for me. And in a number of instances, I was able to relay targets to the fighters to destroy Houthi targets. And that was pretty exciting. And then I, go back to my ship and review the tapes, review the feeds from our own drones to see, the results of those attacks. And that made me feel like I had mission and purpose.
Yeah. So it's kind of like I guess you could say you're pointing the tip of the spear there, really, weren't you, for those guys? And am I right in thinking that a Skyhawk is that an AWACS, or am I thinking of completely different things there?
Oh, the E2C Hawkeye is like an AWACS, right? It's got the big disc on the top,
Yeah.
two turboprop engines, a crew of five. It does essentially the same job as the AWACS.
Ah, I see. Makes sense. Sounds good. Thank you for the info. So I
Yes.
guess rewinding one more time then onto all this, then I mean, how does the job for being the commanding officer of an aircraft carrier come about? Is that something that you apply for, or there's a guy in a dark robe knocking your door one night and say, "Hey, here's your invite," or how does it work? Like, talk me through it. How do you even get to that
Well,
position?
after you've done your squadron command tour as a CO, and then you're eligible to be looked at. And every year, the Navy does boards where they will review everybody's record to select people for these positions. You can essentially say, "Don't select me." You could send a letter and say, "Don't pick me because I'm thinking about retiring at 20 years or whatever." Right? I did not do that. Instead, I sent a letter that said, "Please do pick me. I am eligible and I'd be willing to do this." And they did pick me,
Right.
and at one of these boards, right? And that meant I had to go to nuclear power school. The rough thing is at the same time I was also applying to Oxford University to do a scholarship program there in the UK, and I got selected for it. And the start date was the same as nuclear power school. So I asked my leadership, I said, "Can I do both?" And like, "No, you're going nuclear power, so you can stay on your timeline." I said, "Okay." So I that would have been awesome. And my family, they're huge Harry Potter fans, and so they were very excited to go there. Just stuff that I deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I think probably I think what I'm going to take away from this is that the sign of a good career is when you're facing a head scratcher of a situation between Oxford and nuclear power school to go to an aircraft carrier to command it. I think that's probably a
Yeah.
sign of a pretty decent career. Out of interest, though, I mean, if you're in that stage, like what age were you when you were doing that, and what was the initiative behind Oxford? Like, what did you want to do there? Were you kind of a bit older than usual uni age, or how did that look?
Um, I was in my early 40s, I think, maybe 41, I forget. Right around that time. I'm only 50 now. Only 50, right? But um, when I applied, you had to submit a proposal, and my proposal at that time was to look at the ethical implications of AI piloted drones. The ones that could make decisions about whether things live or die, or
Mm.
people, and kind of unpack some of those problems. And one thing is, like, we like having a man in the loop to be able to make that final decision. A lot of flying isn't just shooting missiles or throwing bombs at a distance. It is doing close air support where you're basically flying over a threat area, and you have friendly troops on the ground, and they're trying to give you a target. To the Mark One human eyeball is probably the best thing because it's also attached to a brain that can kind of discern things. And I've had friends who've been told to strike targets using their eyeball, looking down and saying, you know what, this is not good because I can see things from the air that the people on the ground can't see, and you don't want to have collateral damage and create a bigger problem. So I worry about AI taking over some of those roles. It'll probably happen at some point, in which case we'd have to figure out some rule sets. But if you read any books on AI, like from a science fiction perspective, even those rule sets break down. So I was going to unpack some of those ideas, I guess.
Yeah,
Anyway.
absolutely. No, I think one of the good episodes to go and listen to, if anyone's interested in hearing more about that, is Tucker Cinco Hamilton, who was the chief of AI test and development integration into the Air Force. Just retired recently,
Yeah.
but my God, what a great episode that was, talking about all of that. So that's a great little learning
Yeah.
point there. And I think kind of last thing really want to kind of touch on with you really is just looking into the future and stuff for young sailors coming into the Navy, and people
Yeah.
who have a head full of dreams, but maybe not too much direction yet. What do you think are some of the most important learning curves there for a young sailor coming into the Navy? And what would you, with all your experience and seeing and managing so many people, what would you say is most important for them to consider coming into this, and what do they need to develop early on?
Well, one of the biggest shocks is like, when we deploy, you're working every single day. So it's hard work and some inhospitable conditions. And, I think there's a lot of people who are willing to sign up for that because they like the challenge. And I try to figure out why people sign up to begin with so we can capitalize on that. I get a lot of answers, because I need to get away from home. I signed up because I needed to make some money. I signed up because, my parents made me, stuff like that. But I don't think most of that is entirely true. I think people sign up because they wanted to put on a uniform. They wanted to salute. And I joke around and said, hey, do you remember when you saluted for the first time? Or actually, when you put the uniform on for the first time, you were saluting in a mirror to practice your salutes? And they laugh because they all did it. I did it because they were proud to wear the uniform, to be part of something greater than themselves. But then the realization sets in, like, oh, this is hard work and I'm miserable and I'm not getting enough sleep, right? So as long as we're honest with the younger generation, no BS, right? Um, Number one, you're going to work hard, right? And you're going to be challenged, and we're going to see what you got, right? But, I will tell them that people are way more resilient than they think they are. Some people, and I've talked to some young guys that are like, oh, I couldn't do that. I can't do boot camp. I won't survive. I can't survive getting yelled at. Yes, you can. You can get yelled at all day. And after a while, it kind of just, goes over your head, right? You can handle it and you'll do great. And I tell them, the people that are in boot camp, thousands of people, thousands of instructors, their sole purpose in life is to get you through it. They want you to win, right? So work with them. And then, when you have those rough days and your morale is low, sometimes you have to dig deep and remind yourself that you're wearing the uniform of a United States Navy sailor, and you should be proud because I tell you, your mom is proud right now. Your mom is off at work right now telling everyone about her son or daughter and how great they are. And my mom was the same way. Linda Hill, she was like the number one fan in all the command Facebook pages. She would be at the office. She was a hospital secretary, and she became the leading expert of the U.S. Navy at that particular hospital, right? And it was just so funny. And then she would tell me things about the U.S. Navy that I didn't know because she was so in tune to what was going on. But that's the kind of pride that parents have. And when people lose that, that's when I get worried, when they forget, their mission and purpose.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And do you think, I know it's such a basic question after such a profound answer, but do you think like things so small like just the Wi-Fi on the ship, do you think that helped connect those two dots between that family pride and just connecting that sailor to just remember,
Yeah.
when you're so isolated out there potentially, or just feeling a bit alone or low or something, that's what
Right.
counts, right? To morale.
When I said that a lot of sailors said they survived it deployment because of their brothers and sisters on the ship. Some days you don't want to talk to those people.
Mm.
Some days you don't want to talk to your boss. You will call mom and just gush, right? So we gave people that opportunity to do that in real time whenever they wanted to connect with their external support network, which is so key. We saw a 50% drop on deployment compared to the 9 months prior in suicidal ideations, right? With 5,000 people, you're going to have people that have mental health issues. That's normal, right? But it dropped significantly on deployment when it should have been way higher, right? And part of it was, we tried a lot of things. We had the Wi-Fi. We had a facility dog that was running around the ship, making friends with people,
Mm.
making people think they were his best friend, right? He tricked me into it as well. His name was Demo, great dog. We had a USO center. So the USO would normally put on shows for military people, but they actually built a little center with gaming consoles. You can go down there. It felt like you're in a pub without the booze, right? And we had thousands of people visit every week in that facility. So those little things matter. And when everything fails, we had a psychologist, we had a few people that were trained therapists that could just sit down and talk to you, so you could talk to someone else other than your shipmates or your parents, right? So we had all these avenues, and if all that failed, you could talk to a dog. Some people don't want to talk to humans, right? So it's just that whole package. I think it helped a little bit, and each one of those elements was pretty small, but good lessons learned there, I'd say, and
Yeah.
what can work.
I guess if I was being deployed to a carrier or something, my initial perception of that would be, carrier life, and I'd think it doesn't really matter which one it is or what name's behind it. I'm gonna get, what I'm gonna get and what I'm expecting. But I guess the question here really is, between the aircraft carriers, do others do the same thing? Do they have Wi-Fi and stuff like that, or is going to a
Yeah.
different aircraft carrier a completely different perspective and a whole different experience, depending on which one you go to? Would you say?
Now they're all trying to get Wi-Fi. So we all talk, all the COs and our leadership, they've listened, and they're providing those resources. So yes, not all of them get dogs, but some are trying the dog thing. So it's still sort of an experimental program to see what impact a dog has on the crew from a morale and resiliency perspective. So yeah, it's very similar program. Food is important to morale too. If you've been on a submarine versus an aircraft carrier, there's a wild difference in terms of the food. Whereas the food can be kind of crappy on a submarine, from what I understand, and I haven't had to deploy on one. Sometimes they get really good at the food preparation. Whereas on the carrier, we have way more food options, and we would replenish a ship with food every single week for the entire deployment. We'd bring across something like 500 to 600 pallets of food, care packages, parts and stuff for aircraft. Like when your aircraft don't work, that actually affects your morale as well. So we need to keep those going so people can fly and do their mission. So all of it matters to quality of life, I
Definitely.
think.
I agree. I'm looking at some of my notes here because you're on the subject of it just quickly now before we round this off. But I'm seeing things like
Sure.
Captain's Chair cookies, Taco Tuesday. I got to ask, are
Yeah.
you a big food guy, Chris?
No, you know, I've always liked Taco Tuesday for some reason, and one of the reasons why I originally did it was to make sure the supply officer gave tacos on Tuesdays. So I kind of made it a sacred day, and that was on a different ship. But other ships do Taco Tuesdays. But then I really celebrated it in the Red Sea because the Houthis would claim that they sunk us, and I'd be like, "Well, today's Taco Tuesday, my absolute favorite day of the week." Right? So it's sort of like a roundabout information warfare campaign, you know. But yeah, no, food is life for everybody.
Love it. No, that's an initiative I can definitely get behind, and I think I'm gonna end that
Right.
there. But I mean, wow, what a great podcast. But the end bit that we always go into now is the shameless plug, really. So we've done those 4 questions. It's just a great moment now to promote anything that you kind of are working on, you want people to take a look at, or just something you believe in. So that could be social media, links, recruitment.
Yeah.
Fire away, take a few minutes and promote what you like.
Well, I like anybody that leads in any respect to consider what I said earlier about the impact of morale on an organization. They need to think about how they create it. They need to understand what the word morale means, that it doesn't mean necessarily happiness, more time off, or more lollipops. It is deeper. It's about allowing people to work, that they want to believe in their work. They want to believe that their work matters. When we during the COVID period, we in the United States, a lot of people left their jobs. They said, you know what, this just isn't worth it. I submit that if there was better morale in those companies and people believed in the mission of the company, they would have been more likely to stay. If they were loved and valued by their employers, if they were given mission and purpose, they were given opportunities to win, there was better communication, so on and so forth, they probably would not have left, right? That's my theory that I'm sticking to. But I think if this is a thing, it has not been well studied, which bothers me. For instance, I was looking at Command at Sea, one of our books that we have in the U.S. Navy. You look up the word morale; it's only mentioned one time. So that's not right, right? This should be central to how we approach human beings first. And I get it. You still have to hold people accountable. You still have to punish. I get all that. But at the end of the day, you can't stop loving and valuing people. That's number one.
Totally agree. I really feel that, and I really appreciate all of the insights there. And I guess the last thing I ask on the show, it's a mini question that I've been making kind of a bit of a new thing, really. It's just a quick one. But if you found a young Chris running around the streets at the age of 10, 11, 12, 13 or something right now, and you had a little moment just to have a back to the future moment and whisper in his ear just a bit of wisdom for going forward, what would you tell young you?
Um, oh, no one's ever asked me that question. There were a couple times when I was a little boy that I didn't stand up for myself. For instance, one time I was doing an audition on my saxophone, and you had to sight read a piece, and I was really good at sight reading. The guy said, "Hey, you've already seen this music before, haven't you?" And I said, "No." And I could tell he didn't believe me, but I didn't fight for myself, and I'd never seen that music before. So I need to stand up for. I should have stood up for myself a little bit. At the end of the day, I don't regret anything. I've made many mistakes. I'm imperfect. Um, but just to remind little Chris Hill, don't let them take away your wits. You are you. It's okay to be shy. That's part of your superpowers, right? So go with it.
I like
Oops, I
it.
just got a call.
You're good. I like it.
I'll
Thank
call
you
them
so
back.
much.
Yeah.
Perfect. No, I really appreciate that. That's a good one. And Chris, it's been an honor. I'm so proud to have had you on here, and this has been exactly what I expected it to be. A really, really impactful episode with so much to take away from it. And I hope everyone enjoyed it just as much as I did. It's been great and a pleasure to have you on. Thank you.
Thanks, Louis. I appreciate it. Very professional, tough questions, but I appreciate it. And good luck to you in your career.
I appreciate it, Chris. And yeah, thank you guys for listening. This has been episode 129. If you'd like to listen to the past episodes, go and have a look at the channel. And if you'd like to listen in for the future ones too, my God, what a guest list that's lined up now. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and spread some love by leaving a like and a comment. Signing off for now. Thanks for listening. Good night.